Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Questions are arising as to whether the DOJ had probable cause to raid MaraLago. Texas AG Ken Paxton is suing TV companies for spying on Americans. President Trump is suing the BBC, and he has denied being friendly with the CBS leadership. Okay, let's get into it. Today, FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed that FBI officials had flagged the probable cause concerns to the Department of Justice in the weeks leading up to the raid at President Trump's MaraLago home. In response to a reporter's statement on X that the FBI didn't believe it had probable cause to raid President Trump's home, Patel responded by saying, "It's true. We just turned over documents to Capitol Hill to be made public showing the FBI told DOJ they did not have probable cause for raiding President Trump's home in MaraLago, but DOJ didn't give a damn and did it anyway." Today, the office of Senator Chuck Grassley released emails that show communications between the DOJ and FBI in the weeks before the FBI raid. FBI officials, whose names were redacted at the time, had concerns about not having probable cause to search the property before the raid. An FBI official wrote in one email that the Washington field office had drafted a search warrant affidavit, but it raised concerns that the affidavit came from a single, uncorroborated, and possibly outdated source. Despite that, the DOJ's Counterintelligence and Export Control section determined that the search warrant still met the standard for probable cause. Weeks later, another FBI agent raised concerns in an internal email and noted that no new facts had emerged despite repeated draft revisions. The agent questioned how long the process should continue without fresh evidence, and he argued that without new information supporting the probable cause to raid MaraLago, the effort was time-consuming and no longer productive. So, in order to reclaim any potential classified records that were at MaraLago, the FBI suggested less intrusive options that could have resolved the issue more quickly, but the DOJ still moved forward with the raid. House Speaker Mike Johnson said today that lawmakers uncovered what he described as widespread weaponization of the Justice Department under the Biden administration. He argued that it was used to target political opponents with President Trump as the primary focus. Johnson also suggested that House Republicans expected as much. He specifically pointed to former special counsel Jack Smith, saying that there needs to be real accountability. He argued that restoring public trust in the justice system requires consequences for those who abuse it. Smith was named special counsel in November 2022, months after the raid. But Smith has repeatedly defended his team's work recently, and he strongly rejected claims that his actions were directed by the Biden administration or other political figures, and he called those accusations baseless. A deposition is scheduled for tomorrow with Jack Smith. The deposition will come after the House Judiciary Committee issued a subpoena that requires Smith to testify in a closed-door deposition as part of its investigation into the federal prosecution of President Trump. Peter Koski, an attorney for Smith, said that he will comply. It has long been speculated that some FBI agents disagreed with the decision to raid President Trump's home. But reportedly, the emails show that the DOJ under the Biden administration had not met the standard for a search warrant, but proceeded anyway. Today, President Trump denied claims that he maintains friendly ties with the CBS News leadership. President Trump posted on Truth Social, "For those people that think I am close with the new owners of CBS, please understand that 60 Minutes has treated me far worse since the so-called takeover than they have ever treated me before. If they are friends, I'd hate to see my enemies." Earlier this year, Skydance acquired Paramount, which is the parent company of CBS News. Then Paramount purchased Barry Weiss's digital media outlet, The Free Press, and installed her as editor-in-chief of CBS News. Weiss founded the Free Press in 2021 after leaving her role as an opinion writer at the New York Times, citing bullying from colleagues and a lack of support from newsroom leadership. While tensions continue with CBS News, President Trump has moved forward with a much larger legal fight with another legacy media outlet. Yesterday, President Trump sued the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, for $10 billion in restitution for the alleged defamation that came in the new special episode that was aired last year just before the 2024 election, wherein the BBC spliced together two parts of President Trump's speech on January 6, 2021. The 33-page legal filing was submitted in federal court in Florida, and it accuses the BBC of airing a false, defamatory, deceptive, disparaging, inflammatory, and malicious depiction of President Trump just 1 week before the 2024 election. And the lawsuit argues that the BBC was deliberately misleading and it intended to influence the outcome of the 2024 election against President Trump. We previously mentioned that the BBC aired an episode titled Trump, A Second Chance on October 28, 2024, which was 1 week before the 2024 presidential election. The lawsuit alleges that the Panorama episode intentionally misled viewers by splicing together remarks from President Trump prior to the January 6 Capitol breach. And the lawsuit argues that the edits were done intentionally and maliciously. The lawsuit said it would have been impossible for BBC's journalists and producers to splice together two distinct parts of the speech from nearly 55 minutes apart unless they were acting intentionally. Such a dramatic distortion could never have occurred by accident. The segment edited President Trump's declaration that he and his supporters were going to walk down to the Capitol and were going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And they spliced it with his statement, which was nearly an hour later.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
The lawsuit seeks $10 billion in damages on the grounds that the broadcast harmed President Trump's personal brand and reputation by falsely portraying him as a violent insurrectionist. When the scandal first emerged, both the Director General and the head of news at the BBC resigned. The network later apologized for the editing and acknowledged that it failed to meet its own standards by creating a false impression, so they already admitted guilt. The BBC also promised to never show the segment again, but the BBC declined to say that it was defamatory. Then, the next day after the BBC apologized for the edited video, President Trump made his original threat to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion, saying that the apology was not enough. So the current lawsuit was expected. Then yesterday, during a meeting at the White House, President Trump announced that he planned to imminently file the lawsuit.
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth, literally. They put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something. So we'll be bringing that lawsuit. A lot of people are asking, when are you bringing that lawsuit? Even the media can't believe that one. They actually put terrible words in my mouth having to do with January 6th that I didn't say. And the beautiful words that I said, right? The beautiful words. Talking about patriotism and all of the good things that I said, they didn't say that, but they put terrible words. They actually have me speaking with words that I never said, and they got caught because I believe somebody at BBC said, this is so bad, it has to be reported. That's called fake news. So we'll be filing that suit probably this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
Yesterday, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed lawsuits against 5 major television companies for allegedly spying on Texas residents by secretly recording what they watch in their own homes. The lawsuits include 2 China-based television companies, Hisense and TCL Technology Group Corporation. Paxton claims that they pose serious concerns about consumer data harvesting. The 3 other companies are Sony, Samsung, and LG. Paxton said, Companies, especially those connected to the Chinese Communist Party, have no business illegally recording Americans' devices inside their own homes. This conduct is invasive, deceptive, and unlawful. The fundamental right of privacy will be protected in Texas because owning a television does not mean surrendering your personal information to big tech or foreign adversaries. Paxton's office said that the companies have been illegally collecting personal information from users through automated content recognition technology. This technology captures screenshots of a user's television display every 500 milliseconds, monitor viewing activity in real time, and it transmits that information back to the company without the user's knowledge or consent. The companies then sell the information to ad agencies that allow targeted advertisements to be shared on different platforms. President Trump signed an executive order and designated fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. President Trump announced the designation during an award ceremony where he honored 13 military service members with the Mexican Border Defense Medal. And with the ceremony as a backdrop, President Trump doubled down on his campaign to secure the southern border by stopping the flow of fentanyl into the country.
Today I'm taking one more step to protect Americans from the scourge of deadly fentanyl flooding into our country. With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which is what it is. No bomb does what this is doing. 200 to 300,000 people die every year that we know of. So we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
President Trump said that there's no doubt that U.S. adversaries are trafficking fentanyl into the United States in part because they want to kill Americans.
They're trying to drug out our country. And you could look throughout history. Look at China when they were loaded up with drugs. They were suffering greatly, and others were able to take them over. And other countries also. They're trying to drug out our country, and we're reversing it rapidly, actually.
President Trump said that the fentanyl that comes across the border is down about 50% because of increased cooperation from China under the trade agreements. But he said that most of the chemicals that are used to make fentanyl are still produced in China. And as evidence of the progress, President Trump pointed to a major fentanyl bust in New Mexico back in May. That bust was where authorities seized nearly 3 million pills. It was the largest seizure of fentanyl ever in the United States. The month-long investigation led to 16 arrests and the seizure of cash, guns, and luxury vehicles across several states. President Trump also mentioned that in November, another 1.7 million fentanyl pills were seized in Colorado. President Trump said that fentanyl does have legitimate medical uses, but cartels in Mexico have turned it into a deadly weapon by mixing it into street drugs and fake pills. So his executive order describes fentanyl as closer to a chemical weapon than a narcotic, noting that just 2 milligrams can be fatal. The order also says that the drug trade run by cartels and foreign terrorist groups helps fund assassinations, terrorist activity, and insurgencies, all of which pose significant threats to U.S. security. So the order directs cabinet agencies to eliminate the threat by calling for a comprehensive approach with coordination across departments of state, treasury, war, homeland security, and the Justice Department to work together to confront the crisis. The order also directs Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to work with other agency heads to use intelligence in order to identify and disrupt fentanyl smuggling networks. In the meantime, President Trump said that he's considering an executive order to reclassify marijuana.
Is it accurate that you are considering an executive order to reclassify marijuana?
We are considering that, yeah.
Okay. Are you planning?
Because a lot of people want to see it, the reclassification, because it leads to tremendous amounts of research that can't be done unless you reclassify. So we are looking at that very strongly.
Actually, back in August, President Trump mentioned that his administration was looking at reclassifying marijuana, saying that while marijuana has shown clear benefits in the medical field, there are also downsides beyond medical use. He said, "For pain and various things, I've heard some pretty good things. But for other things, I've heard some pretty bad things." The reclassification of marijuana refers to changing how it is categorized under the Controlled Substances Act. This categorization determines how a drug is regulated, researched, prescribed, and enforced. Under the Controlled Substances Act, Schedule 1 is the most restrictive category. The drugs in this schedule are defined as not having a medical use under federal law with a high potential for abuse. Heroin, LSD, and ecstasy are categorized under Schedule 1. Marijuana is currently listed in Schedule 1, even though it is legal for medical or recreational use in many states. Meanwhile, Schedule 3 is a less restrictive category that would acknowledge marijuana's accepted medical use and allow broader medical research. Widely used medications such as anabolic steroids, testosterone, and ketamine are categorized under Schedule 3. If the Trump administration moves forward with the order, it would likely pick up where the previous administration left off. Under President Biden, the Department of Health and Human Services, the HHS, was asked to review the drug status. After the HHS completed its review in 2023, it endorsed moving marijuana to Schedule 3. Then in May of 2024, the Justice Department of the Biden administration announced that it planned to formally move marijuana out of Schedule 1 and move it to Schedule 3. But then the administration's changed and the case did not proceed. Supporters of reclassifying marijuana point to decades of reports which suggest that marijuana can help with conditions like insomnia, anxiety, and pain. But the CDC says that more recent research has raised questions about how effective marijuana really is for treating certain types of pain. Moving marijuana to a different category wouldn't legalize or decriminalize it, but it could reduce red tape in states where marijuana is already legal. Right now, its Schedule 1 status keeps many banks from working with cannabis businesses and makes scientific research difficult. Researchers argue that easing these restrictions would make it easier to run proper clinical trials in order to better understand both the benefits and risks of cannabis. China's foreign trade figures have astonished the world. In the first 11 months of this year, exports reached $3.4 trillion, marking a year-on-year increase of 5.4%. Meanwhile, imports stood at just $2.3 trillion, representing a 0.6 year-on-year decrease. The resulting trade surplus surpassed $1 trillion, setting a new historic record. Despite the United States imposing average tariffs of 37% of Chinese goods, imports of Chinese products to the U.S. increased by 10%. So what lies behind this phenomenon? Economic commentator Dong Fang analyzed that this is not merely an economic achievement, but rather the concentrated manifestation of the Chinese Communist Party's extreme mercantilist policy, which is pursuing trade surpluses as an objective, seizing global wealth through subsidies, along with currency manipulation and overcapacity. The low cost of Chinese products is primarily predicated upon China's domestic employment environment that is characterized by low labor standards and minimal costs. Furthermore, the Chinese Communist Party provides state subsidies for exported goods. This enables enterprises to dump surplus products abroad at prices unrivaled by other nations. We have previously discussed this matter in considerable detail. The Chinese Communist Party has now acquired another tool, exchange rate control. This year, the renminbi, the Chinese currency, has depreciated by approximately 10% against major currencies such as the euro. And this further amplified the scale of the trade surplus. From low-end textiles to high-end technology, Chinese products are significantly eroding Western manufacturing. China accounts for 37% of global container exports. Currently producing over 60% of the world's solar panels, China is projected to export more than 6 million electric vehicles this year. And China occupies core positions in supply chains for semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and advanced batteries. Beyond manipulating exchange rates, the Chinese Communist Party continues to maintain its export advantage through trade diversion. And even with the United States imposing tariffs averaging 37% on Chinese goods, U.S. imports of Chinese products still increased by 10%. The consequences of this dumping of low-end products is that while China appears to be the world's factory, it is in fact devouring other nations' manufacturing sectors, their employment opportunities, and their development prospects. Goldman Sachs economists note that the spillover effects of Chinese growth have turned negative. A 1% increase in China's GDP once boosted global growth by 0.2%, but now it drags it down by 0.1%. Developing nations face an even harsher impact. The World Bank estimates that while China's exports have saved emerging markets $200 billion in import costs, they have resulted in the loss of millions of manufacturing jobs locally. Western nations' economic growth is driving global demand, whereas China's expansion is draining demand from other countries. And China's economic dividend is now becoming a global burden. Calling for the Chinese Communist Party to adjust its trade strategy was also one of the objectives of French President Macron's recent visit to Beijing. Upon his return from China, he warned that if China fails to reduce its trade surplus, Europe will be compelled to adopt firm measures, including imposing tariffs on Chinese goods. Although the Chinese government prohibits its citizens from using Meta's social media platforms, such as Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, it permits Chinese enterprises to use these platforms to advertise to overseas consumers. Consequently, Meta's advertising business in China has flourished, with advertising revenue ultimately exceeding $18 billion in 2024, accounting for over 10% of its global advertising revenue. However, some of these advertisements are illegal. Reuters reported, citing internal Meta documents that it had obtained, that Meta calculated that over $3 billion, approximately 19% of this revenue, stem from advertisement promoting scams, illegal gambling, pornography, and other prohibited content. These documents are internal materials produced over the past 4 years by Meta's finance, lobbying, engineering, and security departments, which have not previously been made public. The documents reveal that Meta estimates that China accounts for approximately 25% of the fraudulent and prohibited goods advertisement that originate on its platform globally. According to reports, victims of fraudulent advertisement on the Meta platform span the globe, including Taiwanese consumers who purchased counterfeit health supplements, and investors in the United States and Canada who were defrauded of their life savings. And despite Meta's commitment to understanding these abuses, it has been reluctant to implement corrective measures, out of fear that they could potentially jeopardize its own revenue streams. A document from late last year stated, following the shift in the integrity strategy and subsequent directives from Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg, the China Advertising Inspection Team was instructed to suspend operations. But Reuters was unable to ascertain the specific details of Zuckerberg's involvement or the nature of the strategy shift. Documents reveal that following Zuckerberg's directive, Meta disbanded its anti-fraud team that was responsible for the Chinese market, while simultaneously lifting restrictions on new Chinese advertising agencies that joined the platform. And another document indicated that Meta also shelved other anti-fraud measures that had proven effective during the internal testing. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.